What is rap culture? Wikipedia describes hip-hop culture by 4 elements: rapping, turntablism, breakdancing, and graffiti. In my opinion, that would have been a great definition for the early 90s standards, but hip-hop has become much more than that, even integrating itself as part of high society when it was previously known as urban street culture. Cue 21 Savage. Julius Bailey has a great book named Philosophy in Hip-Hop, which he presents hip-hop as originally intended to serve the public by curtailing violence and gang warfare through culturally transformative artistic means. This might be true to an extent, but the industry has created a sort of demand for this type of gangster rap, largely in part through the media's use of controversy as a means of emotional manipulation involving the West and East Coast feud. The music industry as a business has become so concerned with profits that it has become negligent in producing representative accounts to the Western youth experience, but has resorted to sensationalized depictions of exaggerated stereotypes. On the surface level, Shaya bin Abraham Joseph, aka 21 Savage, definitely falls into this category. With his evil and dark toned persona, he's made a name for himself, becoming the serial killer rapper from Atlanta. Growing up in an urban neighborhood does something to the individual. I've grown up in one of the worst parts of Dallas, Texas, high in crime and homelessness, and growing up with the sort of energy that isn't matched by any other part of town. This energy could only be described as predatory. The fear of being taken out by no fault of your own, and the constant need to display threatening body language so you wouldn't become a target. It's exhausting and very real if you've ever been part of this culture before. Think of it as being in an unfamiliar bar in a different part of town, and when you step in, everyone constantly has their eyes on you. What do you feel threatened? Of course, this is no way to live, and it's a rather juvenile philosophical view of the world and other people. 21 Savage, like many gangster rappers, has come from a background much like this. Plenty of people have no experience in this type of lifestyle, but have experienced the same psychological theory in one way or another. Social identity theory is a person's sense of who they are based on their group memberships. Think about going to your high school football games and being submerged by the camaraderie. Everyone cheering along to defeat the opposing team. It's an us versus them mentality and can reach many other levels of intensity. Social identity theory was Henry Tajfeld's greatest contribution to psychology, where he proposed that the groups which people belong to were an important source of pride and self-esteem. Groups give us a sense of social identity, a sense of belonging to the social world. 21 fell into this psychological pitfall, and through the result of this, lost his best friend to a shooting and was put into a hospital himself. He was so involved in this lifestyle with intense opposition that he was willing to die for his social group. It was only through losing his best friend that he was able to transcend this mindset and focus on his music, leaving the other world behind. 21 Savage finds success in his dark, graphic, and often funny lyrical descriptions, which seems like he hasn't moved far from the mindset that put him in that hospital so long ago. In reality, he really isn't like that. Throughout his career, 21 has launched multiple financial literacy campaigns and pledges for donations involving the children of Atlanta, even going on to announce on The Ellen Show how he would help youth with understanding money management. It's obvious that with everything he's been through, he understands that there has to be a change in developing our children.
We're very glad that you're here. We know you have an awesome program that you want to share with our students to teach them about money management and your partnership with you.
Right now. Saving money, investing money, and making your life easy. You alright? What's your name? How you spell?
The book I mentioned earlier, Philosophy in Hip-Hop, mentions one of Plato's well-known ethical arguments in relationship to the state of hip-hop. The ideal society that Plato describes will vanish when there is disorder and when there is injustice. Hip-hop exists in a struggle between the will to become an agent of justice and submission to external pressure, to conform to a pre-constructed narrative. The meaning of the book deals with the idea that hip-hop has lost a collective sense of purpose since its corporate takeover. When society or its parts collectively become driven by individual desires rather than a greater good. However, hip-hop culture has responded favorably through artists like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. Maybe one day the massive 21 Savage's work could become an external representation of his life in today's age, not what he was many years ago. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant formulated an individualist definition of enlightenment. He said, "Enlightenment is man's emergence from a self-incurred immaturity." He argued that this immaturity comes not from a lack of understanding, but from a lack of courage to think independently. These ideas were built off the German idea of man's involvement in culture, the word Bildung, meaning self-cultivation. In this sense, the process of harmonization of mind, heart, selfhood, and identity is achieved through personal transformation, which presents a challenge to the individual's accepted beliefs. For these reasons, I believe 21 Savage has solidified himself as a current face of hip-hop culture. He may not be the most lyrically inclined or the most popular, but 21 definitely has a story that needs to be told. One that involves a man's environment and his perseverance to cultivate his self-image, and succeeding at that. Being a minority in America isn't easy, and coming from a Hispanic heritage like myself, I haven't heard of any good experiences with ICE. 21 and I can both say we're not fans, but during his detention involving his expired visa, the most condemning thing that happened was ICE's dismissal of 21 Savage's belonging. These quips relied on the dangerous logic of ICE's statement, the implication that Abraham Joseph's newly revealed immigration status renders him a fraudulent cultural interloper. This, despite the rapper having spent his formative years in Atlanta, Georgia. The uncritical responses reflected an unfamiliarity with the agency's wide-ranging tactics to discredit its detainees. Absent from many of the responses to the rapper's detainment was a nuanced understanding of how dangerous the processes of immigration could be, how mandatory assimilation can feel upon arrival in America, and how easily humanity is revoked. Despite all of this, 21 Savage still continues with a strong sense of self and reassurance, transcending what the public thinks of him and becoming the face of hip-hop culture. As a business has become so concerned with profits that it has become The German philosopher Immanuel Kant formulated an individualist Julius Bailey has a great book named Philosophy in Hip Hop, which he presents hip hop as an originally and producing representative accounts to the Western youth experienced by